Hello, I'm Joe Naab from Vocal Nebula, and in today's video, we're going to ask the question, are you a tenor who mistakenly thinks he's a baritone? And this is an important question because this happened to me, and I know some others that this has happened to, and there's a reason behind it. And so let's dive into that. First off, we'll start with a little bit of history, is that to understand that voice types were created by composers for composers in the beginning, so they could place them in the arrangements that they're writing. And in the very beginning, for male voices, there was only bass and tenor. So the baritone voice type grew out of the fact that there were plenty of men who sang somewhere in between bass and tenor. And even since then, there's subtypes for each group. Each group will have at least two, which is dramatic and lyric. But there are others as well. It's a little complicated, but we're just going to talk about the broader strokes, baritone and tenor, and why people get miscategorized, why tenors end up with baritones. And so there's a lot of different criteria that go into categorizing them. And it's so much less important if all you sing is contemporary music, like rock and pop. It becomes a little more important when you're singing, say, musical theater, classical music, or opera. But it helps to know, because it helps to know where you're going to do your vocal training as well, what piano scales you're going to use to train your voice, eliminate the break, grow your range, but it also helps you choose what songs you're going to sing as well. And so one of the main criterias that are used to determine voice type is where your voice switches from this chest feeling to head feeling, chest resonance to head resonance. It's called your second passaggio, or your second passaggio point. It's your main passage point. And the difference between a baritone and a tenor is about 3 half steps on the keyboard, black and white keys, 3 half steps. And so they're not that far apart. And what will happen is the tenor, the main passaggio for the tenor voice is the F sharp 4. Okay, also called the G flat 4. And it can be plus or minus a half step depending on if you're very dramatic tenor or a lyric tenor. And you go a few steps down from there and you're looking at the E flat 4, also the D sharp 4, which would be the baritone's main passaggio. And so this is a tricky part because that same note around that, the D sharp, the E flat, that black key, is also the first passaggio for the tenor. But it's an easier passage to get your voice through before the second passaggio, which is more difficult. Well, what happens is, and what happened to me is, I've been told I was a baritone my whole life up until about 2 years ago. And I took voice lessons when I was in my 20s. They didn't work out really well. And then I started again in my 50s. And in both cases was declared a baritone. And what happens was that E flat 4 was really difficult for me. My voice just it's like hitting a brick wall. So I was told I was a baritone. Oh, that's your second passaggio. You can't get past that. But what happens is everyone has problems with that note, even female singers. There's something about it. It's not quite known. Some people think it has to do with the size and length of the tube underneath your vocal folds. But whatever the case, a lot of people have problems with it. But also for tenors, if you're a beginner, or it doesn't really matter your level, what matters is your vocal problems. If you have a lot of strain in the lower throat with your false vocal folds, if you haven't improved your breathing, like fixed your breathing problems and then strengthened it and taken it really far, strengthening it if you can, what will happen is you're always going to get stuck at that E flat. And it's very, very hard. And so it's natural for a coach to just say, well, that you're probably a baritone. But as you go about solving those problems with lower throat strain and extra pressure, which also pressed phonation of your vocal folds, and they're related problems, as you solve those problems, and you solve them by improving your breathing, and then also by putting a lot of focus in your training on learning how to make sound with your lower throat wide open. And once you begin to solve those problems, that passaggio almost disappears. And then you start to realize that a few half steps up, you've got a new obstacle, the F sharp 4. which is the tenor passaggio. And so this is how you can get misclassified. And so what's the solution is to forget about it in the beginning and focus on, not on performance, but focus on rehabilitating your instrument. Nearly all voice coaches are performance coaches, and they don't have a lot of knowledge in vocal rehabilitation. This is now my area of expertise. I have special training to actually train people to solve these problems. And so that would be my recommendation, is devote yourself to fixing the instrument, solving all the lower throat strain, the breathing problems, and getting your phonation trained, which is just your full range. Just go up and down your range over and over again with semi-occluded exercises until your voice starts to open up. And then if you stay at that E flat 4 as your passaggio, then you probably are a baritone. But if it gets easier and easier and easier, and you find a new obstacle up at the F flat, no, the F sharp 4, then you may be a tenor. And so all the songs you sing change, and the way you vocal train changes. And I love it. I'm actually now a spinto tenor, which is a rare type of tenor, but I love it. Okay, so I hope that helps you out. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Otherwise, have a great day.